Hello, today we are here to discuss Apiary from Stonemaier Games. It's their latest release. But before we get into that, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell down there so you can follow along on all of our, I'm reluctant to say anything about bees, bee-related games. Rob, what can you tell us about this game?
This is a 2023 release. Just came out a couple of weeks ago. I think I got it in the mail. Plays 1 to 5 people. Now, this part might not be accurate. It wasn't for us. It says it plays in 60, 90 minutes. It took us like 4 hours.
Well, we had Heather and Miranda.
Well, I mean, we had people that were taking long turns, but even then, it still was a pretty long game. Now, it does play ages 14 and up. I think that's pretty accurate. There's a lot of... It's not really complicated, as we'll get into, but there's a lot of mechanisms in the game. Designed by Connie Vogelman, art by Kwanchai Moria, which I think he did a phenomenal job. I love the art. Published by Stonemaier, as Randy said. Now, we got several different price points. Now, it's going to retail when it does come out. It's right at pre-order for now for $69. Miniature Market has it for $60. Card House and Game Nerds has it basically around the same price of $53.95 or $97. And Geek Market currently has 1 copy on sale for $46, which would be the same one that I would have, which is the numbered version, because the retail versions won't have the numbers on them. And so that's about it.
All right, so what you get in the box? Well, first of all, you get this really cool bee miniature.
Yeah, that's called the Queen Ship.
Yeah, this is Bees in Space.
Yeah.
Or Bees in Space!
So, make a comment if you know where that comes from.
Yeah. Bees. It came from us, actually.
That's
we just
true.
said it.
That's true. But it references an older show.
So, there's really cool looking...
your
workers that have their, for whatever reason, a die-faced body, but you need it for numbering as your power level. You don't roll them or anything.
Right.
You have a lot of cardboard tiles. The cardboard it has a slight linen finish, and they're good thickness. Yeah. The play mats are not such a great thickness, but they do have a good feel to them. They have
it's got a little bit of a texture to it, so they don't slide around too much.
Yeah. All the cardboard in general is pretty good.
I mean, I think it's pretty standard Stonemaier quality. It's good stuff.
You got a pretty large board that goes in the middle of the table,
and
it does
it's
have
double
a finish
sided.
as well. Yeah.
So this is the 4 to 5, but there's also 1 through 3.
Okay, and all your markers are just basic cubes.
Yeah.
There's nothing outstanding about those. Your resources are shaped. There's no screen printing on them, but they are shaped like the different resources, which are like pollen and water and fiber. And then we called them the Rolos or Reese cups, but these are
that's the wax.
The wax, and then there's
and we got
honey comes in a pot shape.
Honey pots is what I call them. So
I think piece-wise, the bee is outstanding. The dice are pretty cool. Nothing outstanding beyond that. I'll probably go ahead and give this a 7.5. I think is where I'm at.
I want to give it an 8 just because they do have a kind of a painted finish to the workers as well. So it's not just a straight collar. So a little bit of contrast to them. I think the quality of the cardboard and everything else is pretty decent.
Yeah,
and the cards have
a linen finish too. Yeah. So.
And now they are a funky shape, so your standard card size sleeves won't work for this. But I think it's mini. It's not mini, but it's not European because I have European too, and these are still smaller than the European. So I'm not for sure the card size, but I didn't have sleeves that fit them in my collection. But,
yeah, so the only disappointment to me was these little markers. These should have been wood to go along with everything.
Yeah, these are called hibernation tokens, and I agree. I wish they were either a little bit bigger or a little bit like more of a 3D element to it or something like that. But not terrible.
No, nothing horrible.
Yeah.
So moving on to themes. So this is kind of a bizarre theme. I mean, you've got these...
So lore-wise, it's because humanity is extinct. And so after centuries of evolution, the bees, finding our technology evolved and then been able to go out into space.
But they're large. They're not large enough to occupy our technology.
Well, no, they're bigger in size too. You just can't tell because of the board. But they're supposed to be bigger as well.
Okay.
In the game.
So somehow they've mutated, become giant
and super smart.
Smart enough to take advantage of our technology that wiped us out, presumably.
But I mean, the workers are really actually bee-shaped spaceships. So.
Yeah. So you've got these bees that are traveling across the universe, discovering new planets, trying to harvest their resources, and trying to develop your hive, which consists of all these hexagonal, conveniently shaped tiles that are going to either give you locations, they call them farms, but it's really locations to store resources.
Right. And generate if you play it right.
Yeah, depending on what you're doing. You have instant bonuses and you have kind of ongoing effects that trigger based upon certain conditions, based on the different tiles, as well as in-game scoring tiles that you can accumulate. So it's really all about building out your board as best you can for scoring opportunities and picking up points along the way.
A great description was it's a 4X game, but you take away the exterminator, the combat side.
Yeah,
it's got the other three.
Yeah, the exterminate's already happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the bees came and just stung us to death.
Yeah, stung us to death.
There's different action locations to do all these things, and it's a point salad in a sense. There's a lot of ways to score points. Albeit most of them consist of the same types of things, whether it be in-game scoring or the track for the in-game bonus at the end, or the tiles themselves giving you victory points. It's not like there's 20 different paths to go down. There's only a handful. Theme-wise, it's a fun theme. It's definitely unique. It's not something I've ever seen before. Some of it doesn't make a lot of sense to me as far as the backstory to this, but if you use your imagination that this is this bee, large bee colony that is taking advantage of technology, harvesting it, it's fun. I'll give it an 8 just because I think the pieces, the art in the background looks really nice, and the play style does fit bees. I just don't understand why bees would be in space, but.
Well, I'm going to go a little bit higher just because there's another aspect to the game that I thought was really unique. So I'm going to go 8.5. Because the art's really good. I really like the mechanics. But one of the mechanics that kind of pushes it up just a little bit is a convert action that we'll talk about. But part of it is you actually got to create a dance. And the book talks about how the bees do this dance.
Yep.
And so the dance aspect is just like, I just think that's a little touch that I really appreciate.
And when we played, you had to create the dance.
Right. And Randy did dance. So we don't have it on film, but
nobody wants to see that, trust me.
But I like that enough to where it just kind of pushes up to 8.5 for me.
Moving on to Rulebook, you read the rules this time because this is your game. I don't have a copy of this yet.
So the rule book itself is really it's not a huge. It doesn't have any art on it, but it does have some really nice pictures. It's got a really great setup page for both the board and for players. Lays it out really well. Tells you how to set everything up. It's got a section for those with starting if you've never played it before versus more experienced players. And really, it's a 16-page rule book, but 10 of it's really involved in the rules.
Yeah, Stonemaier always gets you into a fairly advanced game. This isn't like a heavy game. This is a medium-level game. I'd probably call it a medium.
I think so, too.
But they get you there quickly. The books are never that bad in most cases. And they have a nice texture feel on all their books, which I like. So
in addition to the rule book, which is really nice, they also have an appendix that defines everything in the game. So all the different tiles, factions, hide maps that go into detail on that. And then they also have a nice little quick setup page. So like if you played it before, you can read through that to remind you all the rules real quick, and you can get started a lot quicker. I can't complain about anything of the rule book. I was able to learn how to play this via solo, reread it just to make sure I had all the stuff in mind for a multiplayer game. I mean, there's nothing to complain about. I guess if anything, if I had to critique anything at all, maybe the font's a little small. But other than that, I had no problems with it. It clearly defines everything. I'm at 9.
My only complaint was that the iconography, there's a cheat sheet. The cheat sheets, which I didn't even know the other side actually has.
So you got an iconography side and a turn order.
The turn order looks fine. The iconography, though, does not show 100% of the iconography. And that was my grievance. Even if you looked in the appendix, like the one tile that had a picture of each of the 3 resources, And it was like, there's also one that has a circle with the three colors, and it's like, what's the difference between the two? And it turns out you said you get one of everything.
Yep.
But there was nowhere in the appendix that showed that icon with one of everything. They just showed each one getting one thing. And I'm like, well, that's like 3 times as powerful as any of the other tiles.
Well, I mean, I think some of the other ones were really powerful too, like getting 2 cards versus 1, stuff like that. So I just think that you were really lucky to get that one.
Well, yeah, I was saying there's definitely some disparity between the different tiles in the game. This isn't really a rules per thing per se. I just wish they would have had all the icons that were on the tiles in the book, in the appendix. Because that one felt wrong, considering every other tile was like 1 resource here, 1 resource there, or your choice. But this one was like all 3 on the same tile. And it felt like we were playing it wrong, but there was nowhere to show that icon was there. So, as far as that's my only grievance with the rules from what I saw. I'll take your score.
Okay.
Even though I do have that one complaint. Moving on to gameplay. So at the start of the game, you're going to have an empty board, but you will get 2 different tiles of these starter tiles. Now, depending on how the complexity, you said there's an easier setting.
Well, it's not necessarily easier, but they have a starting type faction, so they're marked by a green star by the name.
Oh, okay.
So they're all basically the same, where you get the same starting resources, but the scoring is different for each. But they're pretty basic in scoring as well. It's like adjacent farms, you get so many points, adjacent whatever. So
okay, so you're going to get a faction, and it's going to have an ability that's unique to yours, and it's also going to have starting resources there's storage for resources on everybody's tiles, but these will be highlighted, lit up, where you'll know that you get those at the beginning of the game.
Correct.
So everybody has a different one of these tiles, and it'll tell you also what workers you get to start with and what levels
they are. Yep.
So there's you have a stash of 4 of these workers that have levels up to 4. And typically you're going to start the game with maybe 2 or 3 of those.
Yep.
I had one that I had the option of starting with all 4, but they were all at level 1. But I chose the one that gave you a level 1 and level 2. Normally, getting workers is kind of a difficult thing, so you really want to get a lot of workers. In this, it was pretty easy to get your workers.
Yeah, it's not. You might lose a turn, but that's about it.
Yeah, so it's not the biggest deal whether you get one that's going to give you. Matter of fact, I'm definitely glad I chose the one I went with, because it gave me the game.
Scored a bunch of points.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised you gave me that board, because it was the one it was focused on in-game scoring. And
I randomized it. I randomized everything.
On your board, it's also got unique abilities.
Yeah, so you have a hive mat, which is the big board, and then you have your faction tile.
Right. And the hive mat will have different abilities. Like Miranda's, I think, gave her different abilities to get things for free when she played on them. Heather's was all about resources.
Right.
She got free resources when she covered up icons.
Yeah, and mine gave me one of the mechanics is the Queen's Favor. So I got a lot of Queen's Favor.
And mine gave me discounts on the types of tiles that I played on top of them as I built things.
Right.
So everybody's going to get a slightly different, positive benefit based on your board. And if you manage to fill your starting board, you get at the end of the game 8 victory point bonus for that. You also can add on tiles during the course of the gameplay that allow you to have more spaces to build, and each of those, if you fill them, is worth additional 8 victory points.
And those are called frames.
Yes. The different actions you can take on your turn with your workers, you can go exploring, and if so, there's 2 positions for going exploring. You place your worker on it, and then however many the number is, you get the queen starts off the board, and you get to move that many spaces and discover a planet. Now, this is the end of the game, so all these have been discovered, but typically you would not have one of these.
So typically there's these little discovery tokens on it first, so you get that. Then you also get to discover planet and get those resources as well.
So, you get a resource.
Or you could get multiple. Yeah. You can get multiple in some of them.
So, typically, you're going to flip it. You'll either have printed resources or spaces for it, or both. If you have a printed one and a space, you'll get the printed resource, but then you'll also get to choose one of the 3 basic resources, which are water, fiber, and pollen.
Yeah.
And you get to put a marker on there to tell you that is now a production for that resource as well. and then everyone else who goes there will get those additional resources. If there's still openings, they get to choose. The next person who goes there gets to choose and add on another one.
Right.
So,
and I've seen at most 3 empty spaces on a tile.
So that's how you play on all the explore actions. Now, each location you go to has a special action that you get if you play a level 4 worker there. So in this case, when you play on the explore action, you also gain
you get to do the level 4.
The 4 benefit on the tiles. So some of the planets don't have them, but some of them do, and they give you a special ability if you play a level 4.
And they're usually really good.
The next action is the advance action. So here, this is how you acquire tiles. So there's 2 different locations, one for the farms, which are the green tiles, and those, like I said, are going to be generating storage capacity for your additional resources. In addition, at the top, they have a triggering benefit that when you retire, you might be able to gain, which we'll get into later. Then the blue ones kind of give you the ongoing effect that triggers based upon a certain condition being met. Or
the phase.
Yeah. And then the orange or reddish tiles give you an immediate effect when you play them. These are the blue and the reddish orange tiles are both from the same location, so you have to pick which one you're going to go for, and the costs are going to vary. For the blue ones, it's typically going to be pollen. If I think it's always
pollen.
And then you get the
and their development. The pink ones or red ones are always wax, and the green ones are always a combination of fiber and or water.
Yep.
So the only difference on the other side of the board I want to point out is that, as Randy said, you got the 2 different sections. On the other side, from 1 to 3, there's only 1. So no matter what you put, your one worker will be able to get any one of the 3.
Okay, so it differs from
it is a little different. Yep.
All right, so the next action is grow. So if you go to the grow, you can then gain additional workers. So you spend whatever your worker strength is that you play there, you get to take that many actions or utilize
you get to spend the strength. Yeah.
Right. So if you're wanting additional workers, let's say I played this 3 level here, I could take 3 actions. I could spend 1 strength and a pollen to get a level 1 worker to add to my supply. Or I could spend 2 strength and 2 resources of my choice of the basic resources to add one of the tiles. Now, early in the game, this was really powerful for me. I managed to get a blue tile that said whenever I took an action here, I got a free one of those tiles, and then I kept getting perks based upon generating those tiles.
Yep.
So I had a nice chain going every time I would go to do a grow action. I'd get a worker, and then I would get a bunch of things for just playing a tile.
It was really cool.
Yeah, so it was a nice. You can make some nice combos with this. The bonus for here is if you've got a level 4 you play here, your starter tile can be upgraded by flipping it over, and you'll have a better perk than what you start with.
And some of them are significant.
Well, mine was a huge bonus at the end of the game for victory points that met the condition that I was already scoring, which was I didn't even look at it and flipped it. I was like, oh, this is sweet. So I got 7 times the number of blue tiles that I had at the end of the game as victory points. The next location is the carve location. This is where you go to get the in-game victory point ones. These require the honey pots, which to me are the hardest things to accumulate in a game. And you're going to spend from, I think 3 was the most we saw.
3 is the most we've seen.
These do not replenish. These tiles, whatever is there at the beginning of the game, that's all that's available to you. Now, you had a perk that you got to store a few at the beginning of the game.
So my faction, I was able to get 3 of the instant development ones and 3 carving tiles as a reserve. And then I've seen cards that allow you to reserve those as well.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I got 6 tiles that was just exclusive to me.
Yeah. So there's really no perk here because you have to be a level 4 to go here.
Right.
Although I did get a tile that reduced it so I could play a level 3 there, but I never really got to take advantage of it. But I got points for it because it was blue anyway. So, and then I got also a card to let me play a worker as if he was a level 4.
Yeah,
I did take advantage of that.
Yeah, I've had those. So.
All right, the last one is the convert action. And the convert action, not the last, there's 2 more, or there's 1 more after this. So the convert action, when you go there, you will be able to change out different things. So you can exchange a card that you've accumulated for a different card, basically 1-to-1 swap. You can change a resource for another resource.
Of the basic kind.
Yes. You can change a yellow, a pollen and a fiber to get one of the wax, or you can trade 2 pollen and a water to get a honey pot.
And this is really the only way to get the honey.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other ways to get the wax from a lot of the cards that we've seen.
Yeah.
But we did not see really anything other than the convert to get honey.
Yeah. Then there are dance tiles here.
Yeah.
So the dance tile is kind of a unique thing. So whenever you'll play a level 4 here, you can establish a dance. So if you do, you basically are taking resources tokens from there, and you're playing them to meet a condition of a cost or a benefit of doing an action. So one of the spaces had 2 costs to get a honey pot, and that was the one I took right away because I needed honey pots. I knew to get those carvings. So I played the things that were most beneficial for me early in the game, which was water and the Queen's track. So when I did that, I was able to spend 1 water and 1 on the Queen track to get a honey pot. But again, you have whatever your worker level is, that's how many times you can do a conversion. So you're still limited on how many you can do at once. And
you can only make 1 dance because you have 1 extra cube. So Randy made 1, I made 1, and 1 other person would have been able to do it as well.
Yeah, and if anybody can do the dance once it's established, so they can go there and trigger it, you get a perk of moving up the Queen's track if someone else goes there and takes your action. All right, the last space is the research space. So this is how you get cards, and you can plant cards, they call it. So basically, you get to draw whatever you play
whatever the strength is.
You draw that many cards, and you get to keep that one of those cards. So if I played a 3, I draw 3 cards, I keep one of them, discard the others. Now, if I played a level 4, I can plant 1 card. It doesn't have to be one I just drew. It could be any of them in my possession.
Correct.
And I've got, at the beginning of the game, 2 spots on my board that I can plant, but there's 2 more I can unlock by playing additional frames to my board, so there's an additional perk for playing frames because you unlock more places where you can store in-game bonus victory point cards.
And they're multi-use, so you can either use a card for any basic resource. You can also exchange the card or turn it in to do some kind of special ability. Most of them, for the most part, were pretty good.
Yeah.
And so whether exchanging for victory points, getting more resources, being able to do all kinds of funky stuff, or as Randy said, you can plant it, and planting always gives you in-game victory points if you meet the conditions.
Yes. And there's definitely different varieties of those. I had one that gave me, you could get a 4 or 5 victory point bonus by planting it, but then I had one that ended up giving me a lot of points because it was 2 points per blue tile. And since I already had a condition that gave me 3 points for the blue tiles, and then when I flipped my bonus, I got 2 more points for blue tiles.
He got a bunch of points for blue.
That was by how I won the game. So those are the different actions you can take. Now, once you've played an action there, that worker stays on the board until they get bumped. Or
if you retrieve.
Yeah, or you can retrieve if you run out of workers, in essence. You generally don't want to do that. I found early in the game I did it once, and generally you just want to wait for somebody to bump you and get moved up. But yeah, retrieving is not as beneficial as I thought it might be. Because what you really want to do is get to a level 4 and then get bumped where you can have to retire, which we'll get into in a second. But whenever you get bumped, you get to take your worker back and you get to increment it up a level and put it back into your supply to play again. Or you can choose to keep it at the level it's at and put it into your landing area. That way, whenever you do retrieve, everyone that's in your landing area will trigger one of your farm tiles' bonus abilities at the top. So those abilities are okay. There weren't any of them that I found to be particularly great.
I really like the 2 Queen's Favor one because it really can bump you up that Queen's Favor track pretty quickly if you play them right.
Yeah.
Because there's other tiles and other cards that says activate a farm tile.
Yeah.
And so if by activating those farm tiles multiple times, it could really be beneficial.
Well, that's why I had, whenever I acquired a farm, I got to activate the ability of it when I planted it. Or I played it, I should say, because planted would refer to the cards. But when I played the tile, I got to trigger that ability as if I had landed one of my tile things. And that gave me a lot of the queens levels early in the game, but then I ended up replacing those tiles throughout the game because every time I replaced one, I got to trigger that new one.
Sure.
So, I had a nice little engine going there with just farming the green farms. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there were cards also that would allow you to trigger them.
So that's when you get bumped. Now, there's also hibernating.
Yeah.
Or retrieving and possibly causing a hibernation.
Yeah, so when you... whenever you hibernate and you get to a level 4, your bee goes back into the supply. You don't get them back. But as a perk for doing that, you get to place one of these tokens down into the hibernation comb, and you get a special ability at that time. This acts as the timer for the game. Mm-hmm. So you get the perk of doing it, and there's a little bit of an area control system going down there where there's 3 different sections. If you have the most in a given section, you will get the victory point bonus for that area. If you have second most, depending on player count, I'm sure, you get a bonus for being in second place, but it's not as good as the first place. So getting your people to retire is advantageous because of that. Not to mention, I had several blue tiles that I accumulated that were based upon hibernation bonuses. So every time I hibernated, I got twice the bonus of that. Plus, I got some free resources. So there was a nice perks for me retiring. So,
and as you said, it's 2 ways the timer, and there's 2 different ways that is related to ending the game. Either every single one of the hibernation comb spaces get filled, or each person has 7. So the first person to use all 7 will also end the game.
So that's the gist of the game. Now, the scoring comes from each tile that has victory points on it.
Potentially, yeah.
There's a number from 0 to whatever on the tile.
I think I've seen up to 4, but there's 0, 3 or 4 points per tile.
Yeah. So there's advantage to getting tiles. In addition to that, for filling the boards with tiles, you get 8 victory points per your starter board and each of the different frames you add.
Yep.
So there's a lot of points to be had from building out your board.
Yep.
The Queen's track, which we talked about earlier, you can get victory points based on how far you move up that Queen's track. You get victory points for the different cards that you plant at the end of the game, and then any of the in-game bonus tiles, which again is a tile-based one. So a lot of these points are all tied to building out your board properly. And then, of course, there's victory points you can get along the way for different conditions. You can, different things you do during the actions of the turn may give you some victory points.
Or even not building. Some of these are like, if you don't play anything, you get a bunch of points. If you don't build a frame, you get a bunch of points. So it really depends kind of on the luck of the draw, because there's quite a few more than what comes out.
Yeah, because I offset because I used my Queen's points to buy all the honey pots. So my Queen score was basically at the bottom. But I had 2 tiles that said 2 of my cards, I should say, that gave me 7 victory points each for being at the bottom of the track instead of being up to level 7 or higher on the track.
Right.
So I offset.
You really lucked out on that.
I offset that penalty.
See, I had a tile that gave me an additional point for every spot I was on the Queen's favor.
Yeah.
So the higher I was, the better off I would be.
Yeah. So but you only can hold up to 4 of those cards. Right. But I had a nice combo of everything that worked well together. All in all, as far as this game goes, I like the mechanics of it. My only grievance, I think, and I think Miranda kind of shared the same grievance, was the specialized or resources, the gold ones for honey and for the wax. There was really only one purpose for each of them. The honey was used for getting the carve tokens.
Right.
The wax was used for getting the immediate bonus tiles. And particularly the wax didn't really generate that much as far as victory points goes. The honey carvings definitely did. Mm-hmm. But you had to go to convert was the only way to get them. So, you're very limited in your options for those. And the other resources, you got lots of ways to generate them. And I don't mind the fact that they were limited. It just felt like not only are they limited in acquiring them, but they're limited in usage of them. That the functionality just felt like it didn't feel like it was as fulfilling as far as scoring-wise, the combos that you could get. for most point salady type games. And maybe it's not intended to be point salady, but it felt like there should have been more things you could use, like some of the cards where you can maybe get bonuses. Now there were a few where at the end of the game, if you however many of those particular resources you had accumulated were victory points. But there was really no other function for those resources.
I kind of liked it in the regards that it just, because of that limiting factor, it made it that much tighter of a game. So I did like the fact that they were hard to get, and so you really had to focus on getting those, and hopefully, and that's the pleasure of playing a worker placement, is that you work really hard to get it, and then someone gets to it before you do. You're like, oh, crap. But that's what makes the game fun. It's just trying to get there quicker and more efficiently than your opponents. And I like that.
Yeah, and I think it's good to have in this game particularly a goal. Like, I got early on the victory point bonus for having the blue tiles. Right. So I had a goal to work towards, as opposed to having just a hodgepodge of different options that generated victory points at the end.
And that's where your faction tile will come in and kind of help you guide there. And the fact that you do get 2 and you pick 1. Yeah. So, you do have a little bit of variety.
But if you like a lot, I think I'm the only one that got a in-game bonus victory point tile for the my faction. Miranda got ones where she generated victory points along the way, which is still useful.
And Heather did as well. She just wasn't able to take advantage of it.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah, I think that there's a lot of ways to score, and it is fulfilling. But I think it could have been more fulfilling if there was resources had more other options for those particular resources. But I still love the board building. This is really, you get a lot of pleasure just constructing your board to optimize for your scoring.
And it's beautiful.
And the card play.
Yeah.
The card play was my favorite aspect of the game, because you could accumulate a bunch of cards, because every frame you got had 2 card locations that you covered up, and you would get more cards. So I had a huge pool of cards that I was using, and you could use them if you're desperate for a resource, or you could use them for triggering the ability.
Yeah, various abilities.
Yeah, I love the card play. That was probably my favorite aspect of the game.
I really do like the cards too. And that's the seed cards.
Yeah. So
overall, what do you think?
Overall, I'm probably going to give it an 8.5. I think that's where I'm at. I think it's got some neat mechanics to it. I ordered it while we were playing, by the way.
I'm going to give it a 9 because I've also played the solo. So it does come with an Atoma deck of cards, very similar to the other Stonemaier games, where it's actually, the Atoma is not hard to implement into the game. It was just very easy to play. It was a great way to learn the game. And so I think it elevates it just that much more, where the solo element was a lot of fun. So I'm going to give it a 9.
Well, it wouldn't be a Stonemaier game without an Atoma.
That's true. But at the same time, some of the Atoma is better than others in their games. And this one I think is done really well. It's almost up there with Viticulture.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, that's our thoughts on Apiary. So if you've had a chance to play this, let us know what you think. And it's probably very few of you have, because it just literally came in for you.
It just came in a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Or if you've ever just been stung by bees.
Well, hopefully that doesn't make you feel too negative towards the game. I hate that game.
Yeah. There's a few times I felt like I was getting stung by bees.
Stupid bees.
So, it was definitely a fun experience, and hopefully you'll check it out.
Yeah.
And maybe you can come up with better justification why the bees have taken over space for, colonizing space. But, yeah. All right. Until next time, we'll keep spreading the buzz. You keep watching.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.